Okay, so I work for Pivotal Labs. I'm a product designer, and I want to talk to you guys about outcomes over output. So a lot of the industries right now, like Agile, user-centered, popular one, and companies want to transform and become powerhouses of software development and innovation, but they have a long way to go before they can achieve that. As good as the buzzwords sound, we have to start with new practices of software development. In my opinion, that's outcomes over output. First things first, set your feature list on fire. Let's talk about the difference between outcomes and output. Output is the amount of something that's produced versus an outcome, which is the result of something. So an example of output would be a feature. The benefits of outcomes are you can immediately tie your team's value to something tangible. You can work in an iterative and continuous discovery fashion, and you will be able to measure the results. So how do I do this? You have to understand the bigger picture. You need to make sure that your teams have designed mission and vision statements so you can always look back to those and ask yourself, what do I want to achieve as a product or as a company? The next step, create an impactful product roadmap. This would include new features, feature improvements, UX, UI, code improvements, and the balance of these will depend on your product goals. So the point of a roadmap is to communicate direction, to define high-level strategic initiatives, and define what progress means to you, your stakeholders, and your team. So this is why I think it's valuable to work in terms of outcomes instead of output. Traditional roadmaps usually follow a waterfall approach, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. They emphasize delivery dates, and they're defined usually by executives who feel like they have a really good opinion on what you guys should be doing and want to inform the direction of your product. That doesn't work because it kind of defines the workflow for the team that's actually doing the work instead of letting them define what they're working on. And it celebrates shipping over creating impact or creating value. It doesn't help us understand what end we're working towards. Outcome-based roadmaps are about timeline and tactics and how we intend to execute our strategy in terms of months. So for like a social website, we want to have profile pages, the ability to connect with others, and then we want to define what our growth means, like address book uploads. So here's an example of an outcome-based roadmap. You have your outcomes, your metrics, and the problem that you're solving. So you're really talking about what you want to achieve with your product and what outcomes someone's going to be able to have by using your product or service. If we're talking about like a fleet management tool, for example, my vision is to have fleet managers have their fleet up and running 100% of the time. Right now, maybe my app is available to companies that have less than 25 vehicles. An example of an outcome is to equip fleet managers or coaches with the tools to be able to measure driver safety and efficiency, and then you would pull the feature from that outcome, which might be like a weekly report that shows you how people are driving and how well. You want to ask yourself, what outcomes do I want to deliver against my vision? And limit yourself to the next 6 to 12 months so you can constantly reevaluate yourself and your product, which is related to the continuous discovery method of working. And you also want to define success metrics. So what's the point of using the right language with your team if you don't know how to measure if what you're doing is successful? So you also want to create a baseline for each metric to make sure that when you measure, you're coming out with tangible results. So here's a sample roadmap for that product that I was talking about. You want to list your outcomes. You want to talk about any risks or problems that could arise while you're achieving this, and then you want to have metrics so that when you put your product out there, you can measure, am I getting the results that I wanted from the outcomes I defined? So they help everyone understand why we're building the product. They create alignment between stakeholders and the rest of the team, and it states what impact we hope to have by creating the product that we're working on. It also helps us provide a plan based on value. It empowers the product team to solve problems rather than implement solutions. And it enables us to learn and adjust, which is really important in software development, especially if you're working in an agile environment. Some tips for me would be to create strong team dynamics. We're in this together. Not one of us is an expert, and we're all continually learning together. Leave a lasting impression, especially important if you're a consultant. You want to make sure your team has the tools to continue this work afterward. And you want to keep your mission and vision statements always visible so you have something to look to constantly. If you guys want some materials or references on any of this, feel free to talk to me after. Thank you.